They heard her cry every night, but no one ever opened the door. Until one Sunday morning, the cries suddenly stopped. This is about Ada and the silence that killed her.
Welcome to Tales by Mnandi. Subscribe, like, and comment as we journey through another episode.
The village of Aro woke slowly, as it always did, with the distant crowing of roosters and the gentle rustling of palm trees swaying in the early morning breeze. Smoke curled lazily from mud kitchens, carrying the faint scent of dried wood and cooking fires. Women moved in measured rhythms, sweeping compounds and preparing the day's first meal, while children chased each other along dusty paths. Life in Aro was predictable, simple, and on the surface calm. Ada was among the first to rise. Her movements were quiet, deliberate, as she went about her morning routine. She tied her wrapper neatly around her waist and covered her hair with a simple scarf. Every step, every gesture was careful. An unspoken lesson learned over countless nights. To anyone watching, Ada was the picture of a good wife. Respectful, obedient, humble. Her smile was soft but never too wide, her voice gentle, her eyes never lingering too long. She greeted neighbors properly, knelt when elders passed, and always maintained a demeanor of calm. In the eyes of Aro, Ada was exemplary. Her husband, Eze, was a respected man, not the loudest, not the fiercest, but commanding in quiet ways. He laughed with other men under the big Agbu tree, traded pleasantries with neighbors, and carried himself with the subtle authority of someone who knew his place. Nothing about his daytime manner suggested trouble, but night told another story. At first, it was subtle. A raised voice, a sharp word. Ada would flinch slightly, then compose herself. She told herself it was nothing, a momentary lapse. People in the village, if they noticed, looked away. In Aro, what happened in a man's house was considered private. Then the cries began. From the outside, it looked like a normal home. But something had already started, quietly. A sudden, sharp sound that pierced the quiet of the night. Ada's voice strained, pleading. But in the compound, the world carried on. Some lifted their heads from their mats. Others turned slightly, trying to make sense of what they heard. Then it stopped. The next morning, Ada emerged as usual, her face calm, her demeanor unchanged. She smiled at neighbors, greeted them, went about fetching water and preparing food. The village whispered among themselves, but no one acted. The sounds had come and gone, and life returned to its ordinary rhythm. But inside the house, the silence had already shifted. Something invisible lingered. Fear, tension. A quiet anticipation that made even routine movements careful. Ada adjusted herself constantly. Her scarf, her wrapper, the way she lifted pots or swept the floor. Every motion was measured, as though the walls themselves might betray her. Her best friend, Ifeoma, noticed first. One afternoon, the two sat behind the house away from prying eyes, and Ifeoma reached for Ada's wrist. Ada flinched barely. But it was enough. "What is happening in your house, Ada?" Ifeoma asked, her voice low, worried. Ada forced a smile. "Nothing," she said softly. "You know how men are sometimes." Ifeoma shook her head. "No, this is not sometimes. People are talking. You don't have to endure this." Ada looked down, her eyes steady on the ground. "I cannot leave," she said quietly. "It is against God's law. The Bible says a woman must remain with her husband. Marriage is for better or worse. This is my cross, and I will carry it." Ifeoma's chest tightened. "Ada, will the same God ask you to die in that house?" Ada did not answer immediately. She only lowered her gaze, then spoke again, soft but firm. "Leave me be, please." The conversation ended there, but the tension lingered. That night, as Ada moved through her evening chores and prepared the small meal for her husband, the quiet house felt heavier than usual. Shadows stretched across the walls, flickering from the firelight, as if echoing the dread that had taken residence in Ada's heart. And somewhere in Aro, beneath the thatched roofs of other compounds, neighbors lay awake in the dark, listening. They had begun to hear the sounds, the cries, the shuffling. But as always, they turned away and life in Aro carried on, until the day the silence would finally break forever. Days in Aro moved slowly, the sun tracing the same path across the sky, the dust rising in familiar patterns along the compound paths. To an outsider, it seemed ordinary. But inside Ada's small house, every day carried an invisible weight, heavier than the last. Aziz's moods had begun to settle into a rhythm that Ada could not predict. Some mornings he would leave the house with a smile that fooled everyone outside. Other mornings his silence pressed down on her like the midday sun on dry earth. Unyielding, scorching. Ada learned quickly to move around him without drawing attention. She swept the floors with steady hands, arranged pots and firewood in perfect order, and kept her gaze lowered whenever he passed. "I will endure this," she whispered to herself one afternoon, her hands trembling slightly as she kneaded yam. "God will give me strength. I must not disobey him. I must not leave my marriage." Ifeoma visited often, each time leaving with a heavier heart than she arrived with. She watched Ada fold her wrapper over her knees and straighten her blouse again and again, as if the small motions could shield her from the violence that waited. "You are strong," Ifeoma said gently one morning. "But strength is not meant to kill the soul. Why do you allow him to hurt you?" Ada shook her head, voice barely audible. "It is not allowed to leave. God will not forgive me if I walk away. I must endure." Weeks passed. The abuse became more frequent, more deliberate. Sometimes it was a sharp slap, almost hidden. Other times it was a strike that left her body aching for hours, her face warm with pain she could not show. Neighbors began noticing something. A shriek here. A plate dropped there. But in Aro, what happened behind the doors of a home was not for outsiders to interfere with. They looked, then looked away. Life continued. One Sunday morning, the sun rose pale behind clouds heavy with rain. Ada was in the courtyard, washing the small pile of clothes she had prepared the night before. The air smelled of wet earth, the faint smoke of cooking fires drifting lazily over the compound. As he appeared suddenly, his steps heavy, his eyes dark. The air around him seemed to thicken. Ada's hands froze in the soapy water, her body instinctively stiffening. "Why are the clothes not yet folded?" he demanded, voice low but sharp, like a blade hidden in silk. I was..." Ada stammered. Her throat felt dry. "Excuses." He cut her off, stepping closer. His shadow fell over her, long and menacing in the soft morning light. The first strike came suddenly, breaking the fragile rhythm of the day. Ada's body trembled, but she did not cry. She had learned that crying would not stop him. She had learned that silence was sometimes her only shield. Another blow followed. Her wrapper twisted around her as she staggered slightly, yet she held herself upright. Her face burned with pain, her chest tightened with every strike. The rain began to fall, cold and sharp, mingling with the sweat on her skin. The sound of it hitting the tin roof was drowned by the sharper, harsher rhythm of fists against flesh. Easy's rage was methodical now, no longer a brief eruption. It was deliberate, drawn out, merciless. Ada's prayers, whispered beneath her breath, were lost in the storm of his anger. The neighbors heard. Some paused, listening for just a moment, then returned to their chores. Others shifted, uncomfortably, their eyes flitting toward the small house. But none intervened. None dared. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Ada's strength was ebbing, her body aching, her spirit fraying at the edges. Yet she did not flee. She did not scream. She whispered a final, trembling prayer. "Lord, give me strength, if only to endure this one more day." And in Aro, the sun rose fully, illuminating the compound. Life around continued. The children chasing each other along dusty paths, women gossiping softly, men laughing under the ogbu tree. But inside Ada's house, the morning light revealed only shadows, bruises, and the quiet endurance of a woman who had given everything, except her hope, which was slipping away with each merciless strike. The days blurred into each other in Aro. The sun rose and fell over dusty paths and clay houses, but inside Ada's small home, time moved differently. Every second seemed stretched, heavy, weighted by fear and exhaustion. Ada's body carried the marks of her endurance. Bruises that would fade into shadows, arms stiff from invisible chains, cheeks sore from strikes that had left both pain and silence. Yet she continued her routine as if each act, washing, cooking, folding, could somehow keep the world outside unaware of her suffering. Ifeoma visited less now, discouraged by Ada's repeated refusals to leave. Each time she tried to reason, Ada would clutch her wrapper tightly, voice trembling but firm. "Even if he kills me, I cannot leave. The Bible, it does not allow it. I must endure." Her words struck Ifeoma, leaving her speechless. There was nothing to argue with, and everything to fear for her friend. Inside the house, Easy's moods had grown darker. His smiles became rare, his laughter hollow, sharp, as if mocking something only he understood. Ada noticed small shifts, the tightening of his jaw, the way his eyes lingered too long, the tension in his shoulders before a word was spoken. She learned to anticipate the storm, moving carefully, lowering her gaze, softening her voice. But no amount of caution could prevent the inevitable. One Thursday evening, as the sky turned an orange-pink and the village winds carried the scent of evening fires, Easy returned early. Ada was kneeling by the small fire, stirring a pot of soup, humming softly to herself. "You are humming," he demanded, his tone sharp as a knife. I was just," she began. "Don't answer me," he interrupted, advancing. The firelight flickered across his face, turning his expression from annoyance to something colder, something dangerous. The first slap landed across her cheek. Her lips parted slightly, a breath of pain escaping before she swallowed it down. Ada did not cry out. She had learned screaming drew no rescue. Another blow followed, faster this time, aimed at her shoulder. She stumbled but caught herself on the wooden stool, holding her body upright with silent defiance. Outside, the village continued unaware. Children played, dogs barked, elders sat under the trees. Life as if nothing had shifted inside that small house. Ada felt the weight of every second pressing into her chest. Her body shook, not from weakness, but from the sheer effort of holding herself together. Every prayer she whispered was a thread, fragile, holding her spirit in place. "I will not give up," she murmured between strikes. "I will endure, for God, for my marriage, for everything." But as night fell and the first drops of rain tapped against the tin roof, the house seemed smaller, tighter. The walls themselves seemed to lean in, pressing down on her. Every strike Ise delivered now carried intention, calculation, a coldness she had never felt before. Her cries were muffled, swallowed by the rain, by the walls, by the silence of neighbors who refused to hear. By the time the moon rose fully over Aro, Ada's body was marked, her spirit frayed. She sank to the floor in exhaustion, clutching her sides, gasping, praying silently. And yet, she did not leave. She could not. The Bible's words echoed in her mind, the voice of her faith and tradition holding her in place, as if chains of belief were stronger than chains of flesh. The night stretched long and unrelenting. Each sound, the wind, the rain, the groan of the house, was a reminder that the world outside moved on, while inside, Ada's suffering deepened. By the end of that night, something had shifted irrevocably. Not just her body, which bore the marks of abuse, but her very soul. Her endurance, once steadfast, like a candle in the wind. And the village, still oblivious, prepared for another day, unaware that the quiet house held a woman at the edge of breaking. The Sunday morning sun barely pierced the heavy clouds over Aro. The village stirred slowly. Roosters crowed, children played barefoot along dusty paths, and smoke curled from small cooking fires. But inside Ada's small clay house, the world felt frozen. Ada awoke to the familiar tension in the air. Every muscle in her body was already on alert, every sense heightened. She moved silently, carefully, adjusting the small clay pot of porridge on the fire. Her arms still bore the dark marks of the past week's abuse, her body stiff, her spirit heavy. As he entered without knocking, the wooden door creaking ominously. His clothes were damp from the early rain, his face unreadable, eyes darkened by a simmering anger that needed no excuse. Ada's heart tightened. She lowered her gaze, folding her hands in front of her, whispering a prayer under her breath. "You are late," Easy said, voice cold, sharp, slicing through the quiet morning. I was just," she began, her voice trembling. "Don't speak unless spoken to," he interrupted, his hand shot out, grabbing her arm. The grip was tight, controlling, as if every movement she made belonged to him. The first blow landed across her cheek. Pain flared, burning hot, but Ada did not cry out. She had learned that screams changed nothing. Another strike, faster this time, across her shoulder. She staggered but remained upright, gripping the small wooden stool for support. Her breaths came shallow, quick, each inhale a prayer. The sounds of the village outside, the children's laughter, the distant chatter, felt like another world. No one heard her, and no one would. The weight of isolation pressed down on her, heavier than any strike. "Why can't you do anything right?" Easy hissed, each word carrying venom. Ada whispered a prayer, her lips barely moving. "Lord, give me strength, please." But even her prayers could not shield her. Easy strikes continued, deliberate, relentless, his anger now more terrifying than ever. Every blow stole a little more of her strength, a little more of her life. She sank to the floor, body shaking, but still she did not leave. The Bible's words rang in her mind. Divorce was forbidden, endurance was her duty. Faith demanded she remain. Her breath grew weaker with each passing moment. The room seemed to shrink, walls leaning in, trapping her between violence and faith. She could feel her heartbeat slowing, each thump a battle between survival and surrender. Then, in one swift motion, a final strike landed across her chest. Ada gasped, pain radiating through her body. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed onto the floor. The house was silent. Too silent. Even Ize paused, sensing that something had changed. He stepped back, staring at her unmoving form. Outside, the village moved on. Children ran past, women carried water, men prepared for the market. Life went on as though nothing had shifted inside that small house. By the time the sun climbed higher, Ada lay still. Her spirit, which had endured so much, had finally left her body. The bruises, the pain, the prayers, they all ended there in the quiet of that Sunday morning. Easy left the house, expression blank, stepping back into a world that had no knowledge of the life he had broken. When neighbors peeked in later, whispers spread. Some shook their heads. Others looked away. No one intervened. No one asked too many questions. Silence had become their shield. Ada's body remained in the house, her suffering invisible to most, remembered only by those few who dared notice. The shadow of a life ended too soon. The village of Aro continued, children laughing, women cooking, men walking past. But inside the small clay house, the silence was absolute, permanent. Her story, a testament to endurance, faith, and tragedy, lingered in the air. Her cries no longer traveled, her prayers no longer rose, and her absence marked the final chapter of a life silenced too soon. Thank you for joining us on Tales by Nnamdi, where the voices of our ancestors speak through every story. I hope this tale has touched your heart, stirred your imagination, and carried you into the world of our people. Remember, like, comment, and subscribe so you never miss another journey into the wonders of folklore. Until next time, let the stories guide your soul and awaken the spirit within.